Imagine there was a grand chess tournament where the world itself is the chessboard, played with living pieces, all competing against each other to become the ultimate king. My name is Lily, I am an artist, and today I will be using chess to create a huge fantasy tournament with a cast of characters. But before I can even begin, I think it would be good to know what chess actually is. Chess is a two-player strategy game on a 64 grid of squares, consisting of 16 different pieces on each side. 1 king, 1 queen, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, and 8 pawns. So that's 6 different types of pieces I need to create character designs for. There's a lot of rules and strategies that come into chess games, which I'll talk about later, but for now, let's set the scene for this world. If you've ever played Mario Kart or any Mario game, you'll know that the worlds and levels will have their own distinct theming. Different themed racetracks, snowy mountains, mines, haunted mansion, underwater, outer space. Imagine that, but for chess. So this world is huge. To be more precise, it's actually a series of planets, with a massive one right in the centre. There's a whole host of ecosystems and places. Think of it like a dream logic universe that Super Mario games follow, featuring a lot of fantastical elements. This world is regulated by stewards, beings who have always overseen these series of worlds and formulated the Grand Chess Tournament as a way of determining who is worthy enough to rule over these planets. They're looking for a wise, strategic, and powerful leader who would make this universe thrive, and they think chess, specifically their version of chess, is the perfect game to decide this. For the video, I will be referring to this series of planets as the kingdoms. So the stewards created what they called kings, from spirits of mortals who had passed on, and engineered vessels for them to inhabit. They have no memory of their mortal lives, essentially being reincarnated. Before anything else happens, these kings are raised and trained for the tournament, practicing and forming useful friendships and alliances with other kings. This is important as even though we'll be competing against each other, there are occasionally team games. And at the end of the tournament, the chosen king can select their allies to help rule the kingdoms. Once the kings have reached a level of maturity, they will be ready for the tournament. But before anything can commence, each king must undergo a procedure to split their psyche into different aspects, each representing a different trait which will be tested through the games. These different aspects are the queen, bishop, knights, rooks, and pawn. They are known as a court, and how they conduct themselves can tell you a lot about the king's own inner subconscious. But the court members have their own introspective personalities and self-awareness, which these kings will need to navigate in order to succeed in the games. The court will be with their king forever, and typically they will name themselves. I will also occasionally refer to them as pieces when talking about the chess gameplay. So let's talk a little more about this tournament. If you've read or watched Hunger Games, you'll know the game makers construct massive arenas, each having their own theme and challenges. That's how I imagine these chess games, along with how Mario Kart tracks have their own theming which can significantly impact the gameplay. Imagine a wide expanse of land themed on a surrounding area, split into a grid of 64 squares. This is the chessboard. It is then up to the king to navigate their team to victory against the enemy king and court. New chessboards will be designed by the stewards all over the kingdoms, each one featuring unique challenges. As an example, one set in a sunny beach paradise. Not only would the king need to worry about the enemy team, they'll also need to be mindful about challenges such as sea monsters, whirlpools, pirates, to name a few. They will be placed on random squares through the board. So it's not as easy as regular chess, where you can just move any piece into any square. If a king directs a court member onto one of these challenge squares, they must clear the challenge before they can remain there. If the piece fails, they must move back to their original square, and the enemy team will then move, losing precious gameplay opportunities. If a court member successfully clears the square, then it will revert back to a regular square for the rest of the match. The same logic applies when it comes to capturing enemy pieces. If the piece goes to capture an enemy piece, the two must fight for the square. If the attacker is unable to capture, then they must move back to their original square, so the king has to think wisely which piece they send into fights, and against which enemy piece. Every time a court successfully clears a square, they gain extra points ahead of the opposing team, depending on the difficulty, so it's encouraged to not deliberately avoid the challenges. The kings will be allowed to learn what the potential challenges are, but every chessboard is kept secret until the match, so no one gets an advantage over the other. The reason for the chess games being such a large map is to make it a more immersive experience for the kings in training, being challenged by not just the game but also the surrounding environment. The terrain can make it difficult to see who's going where, so the kings will be provided with a top-down map which clarifies the board grid, making it easier to navigate. The kings will take the map with them when moving out on the board and will be in constant communication with their team. A king won't immediately fail the whole tournament if they lose a match. It functions similar to Premier League sports with a table of points, like I mentioned with clearing squares. So 1 or 2 losses is expected, and can even be a valuable insight into how each king deals with failure. Whichever court successfully reaches a checkmate will be provided with a substantial number of points, but it doesn't necessarily mean you will win in the end. That's why it's encouraged to take on as many challenge squares as possible, as well as capture enemy pieces in order to build up the points. Now that we've established how the games work a little, let's move on to introducing the characters who will be participating in this tournament. There are numerous kings and courts who are taking part, each with their own distinct visual identity, but I will be focusing on one king and court in particular. Let's begin with kings. Kings are reincarnated spirits designed and grown by the stewards in their quest to find the perfect ruler of the kingdoms. They spent a period of time maturing and training amongst the stewards in preparation for this tournament, which many consider to be their life purpose. Once they were of age, the kings underwent a procedure to split parts of their psyche into living aspects, called courts. The reason for this is so stewards can assess every king based on how well they can conduct and manage their court during this tournament. Every king has their own unique traits and how they present themselves. They are recognised mostly by the small crowns they will wear, which, if they win the games, will be replaced by the true monarch crown as a symbol of their newfound authority. The kings are actually the weakest pieces, relying on the strength of their court to protect them through every match. A king can move, if needed, one space in any direction on the board, but they are normally protected for as long as possible. Next is the queen. Queens are aspects which represent the wisdom of every king. They are the strongest member of the court, in mind and body, normally wielding a chosen weapon they will use in battle. Strategy is usually the queen's role in every tournament, assisting the king in deciding where to send what piece, amongst many other tough decisions. A queen will normally remain unexposed in a game for as long as possible, only moving out in the open when needed. Once out on the board, a queen usually has the strength and knowledge to take on any board challenge. Like I mentioned earlier, a king's court can have their own range of personalities which differ from other king's courts, as no two kings are the same either. Our king's queen is quiet and methodical, typically having a hard time reining in the other members of the court whose personalities make it harder to coordinate moves and actions. The king relies on the queen a lot since they literally represent their inner thought process. However, the queen can overanalyze situations and will often try to opt for the safest course of action, avoiding any risks where possible, which doesn't always guarantee a win. On the board, a queen can move horizontally, vertically, and diagonally, and can move as many spaces forward if able to. The 2 bishops represent the king's faith. Having a strong belief in yourself and the world is an important trait for a king, and the bishop will often be the one to provide words of encouragement to the court members. Our king's bishop usually tries to keep morale up, but typically ends up losing a lot of confidence if the match isn't going well. The queen often chides the bishop and the king for despairing, emphasizing that a negative attitude will only result in further failure. Despite this, the bishop will still continue to despair. A bishop can move any number of spaces diagonally, and a bishop is sufficiently strong but is better at challenge squares which involve riddles or puzzles, rather than combat. The two rooks represent the king's sense of guard, how well they protect themselves from outside influence. A king could be very guarded of themselves, not sharing much with others, resulting in rooks who will often move in to protect a king during a match, even if the king did not order it. A king who is too open about themselves could have rooks who won't defend them as easily, leaving them exposed. Our king's rooks are incredibly protective, and much to the queen's annoyance, will often move in to protect the king as soon as possible in a match. Whilst this is a smart tactic as a way to defend the king from a potential oncoming attack, the queen dislikes that the rooks do this unprompted and not follow direct orders. The king loves the rooks, who sit on their shoulders in between every match, acting like mother hens almost. Rooks can move a number of spaces vertically and horizontally if able to do so. They are not the best choice for capturing or challenge squares, however in situations where their king is under threat, these rooks will turn into vicious little monsters. The two knights represent the king's determination. A king must be confident in their ability to rule, but not so overconfident that they cause themselves trouble during a match. Their level of determination is shown through how their knights conduct themselves on the board. Our king's knights unfortunately cause a bit of trouble in their passionate determination to show off their skills to the king. They often compete with one another to prove who the best knight is, much to the queen's annoyance. Though they are very skilled in combat and can take in enemy court members with not much trouble, their hot-headedness means they can often take risks which aren't needed, and sometimes can end up jeopardizing the match. Knights can move in an L shape on a board, and are the only pieces that can jump over the other pieces. Leaping through the air as high as they can is a common practice they endeavour to show off in front of everybody. The pawn is an interesting aspect. They represent the king's sense of sacrifice and risk-taking, as they are often the first pieces to be taken out by opposing court members. 8 pawns are needed for the match, but there is only one true pawn. The king's pawn has a unique shape-shifting ability and can split themselves into a maximum of 8 shades through a necklace of orbs. Interestingly, for this version of chess, it's up to the king to decide how many pawns they want on the board. This is because in their one state, a pawn is actually a very powerful piece, and that power gets weaker and weaker the more times they split. It is wise to spread out the pawns across the squares, weaker but are sacrificed instead of more valuable pieces, as the queens often put it. Having one pawn creates a very powerful piece, but if they don't play the game right, the king can end up losing the whole match because of this decision. Our king's pawn is an interesting character. Whilst they follow orders from the king and queen a lot more easily than the other court members, it's often with a humorous defeatist outlook. They have adopted a rather jokingly cynical perspective of the games, jesting at how they're always the first one out, since the queen prefers to play it safe and have them split into 8, as that is typically what the enemy side does. They rarely bother to fight if an enemy piece enters a square to capture them. A pawn can move straight forward 1 square or 2 on their first go, and capture on squares diagonally forward. They cannot move backwards. Thanks to their shapeshifting abilities, a pawn is able to shapeshift into another piece beside the king, if they manage to reach the opposite side of the board, which can make the game a bit more interesting. The stewards will watch and commentate every match. The audience will be made up of other kings and their court members who aren't playing. They may pick which king they want to support for each match. When a king is not playing a game, they normally rest with their court in a designated living quarter, or exploring the kingdoms to learn their hazards and possible challenges before a match. Our king's queen usually likes to train in an environment that will be the theme of the upcoming match, familiarising the court with the surroundings, much to the dismay of the rest who'd rather play volleyball or snowboard. Especially the knights, as despite their determination in the games, they exhibit an overconfident attitude when it comes to practicing, believing to be already skilled enough for any challenge. team building exercises is a definite must for this King's Court. Also, team games, whilst rare, do occur. It still takes place on a 64 square grid, and the two kings must decide which of their court members will participate, with the rest sitting it out. The purpose of the team games is to build bonds and trust amongst the kings, as even the losing ones will still have a role in overseeing the kingdoms, although very minor compared to the main authority. Whilst most kings are eager to be cordial with one another, there are a few who prove to be a little less friendly with their competition. Rule breaking is not as rare as you think it would be in this tournament. Not the type that occurs in a tabletop chess though. Every match has its own set of challenges, therefore its own set of specific rules. It is the responsibility of the kings to follow the rules and not allow foul play. But foul play does happen, orchestrated by kings who have less love of the rules. Even though there is a huge audience watching, they are not watching everywhere all the time. A few kings have been accused of sending their pieces to sabotage others whilst all the attention is on a fight in another square. Many queens, ones who respect the rules, have brought this to the attention of the stewards, but frustratingly they go by the policy of if they didn't see it happen, it can't be fouled unless there is undeniable evidence. If a king, or any member of their court, is caught breaking the rules, points are taken off their final score. If too many strikes occur, a king could be completely forfeited, which is basically the same as being exiled. Our King's Queen, as well as a few others, suspect favouritism amongst the stewards to certain kings. It makes sense, as each steward was tasked with raising a handful of kings each, so it's not so far-fetched that a few would favour their own kings over others, so much so that they would look the other way whilst allowing sabotage. This competition will take a long time to come to completion, and every king is vying for the opportunity to become the ultimate authority over the kingdoms. Let's hope our king can pull their team together and compete for that title. But whilst this seems like a fun, prestigious event, a little dark side seems to lurk under the whimsical tournament.